Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of Juvo Hub, your helping hand in property management. We are so grateful to have another episode today, and we're welcoming back our first repeat guest, Steve Wunch. We're so happy to have him here. Steve, glad to have you. What's been happening in your world? What's new and exciting, my friend?
Thanks, Jonathan. Nice to be back. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a 28-year veteran in property management. Started as a leasing consultant, worked my way up through different organizations, primarily in training roles. You guys probably don't know this yet, but I just recently took a position with a company called Leap, and we are a deposit replacement and rent guarantee platform to help expand the pool of prospects and help owners and operators compete with comps who don't offer rent guarantee and deposit replacement options. So, we're in the business of helping people find a home and helping leasing consultants and property owners to be more successful and capture an audience that they normally couldn't capture. So I'm excited to be on board with the team in a business development role, and then probably moving into something along the lines of marketing and training in some form or another. But training is a lot of sales. I don't know if people really think about that, but to help a customer understand a platform, a program, at the end of the day, it's all about educating them on how your product fits their niche and then teaching their teams how to use it. So learning is part of my DNA, no matter which side of the coin I'm sitting on.
Absolutely. I reflect back on our previous show, and man, you really highlighted a lot of how important it is to have that connection. So glad to have you back, episode
Thanks.
22. And as always, I need a little drum or something, Mark. Maybe I should.
How about that?
Mark Howell from Howell Creative Concepts. There we go. I didn't say any words, but I did the drum roll.
I like it.
Glad to have you again as our host. What's happening with you? What are we doing today?
Thank you, buddy. I have to say I'm excited because I wasn't a part of the last conversation that you guys had together. So Steve, Steve and I go way back, and look, you kind of called us all out on the time frame, Steve, throwing out a 28-year, year mark. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say we are all professionally seasoned in our roles, but
good.
I love that our friendship goes so far back. I don't know if you remember this, Steve, but you were one of the first people that I ever actually interviewed with when I was getting into this industry. I think we've talked about it, but you kind of looked at me like, oh my God, who is this green guy? You said, why don't you go to a recruiter, a headhunter, and you sent me to Human Landscaping, right?
Landscaping.
So that's how I first got into this industry. So it's funny that our careers have become what they've become, but it's exciting to see all the things that we've been able to do. And I've watched you for so many years and admired your passion. And I love that you've landed on a new, what we call that lily pad. That's what Debbie Phillips always says. You help you land on a new lily pad. So you've landed on a good lily pad, my friend. And you're right. It's education and learning. It never stops, does it? It doesn't matter what you do. You're always learning. And this topic today is one that I was excited about to kind of recruit you back for, is all about education, how it has changed, and how have we changed as either an industry or just in the generational changes. Education has certainly evolved. And you know this, I know this, both educators in this industry. It's funny to me that we were just talking about this, that years ago, and this hasn't changed a whole lot. Taking a 3 or 4 hour fair housing class certainly kind of is still the same, but boy, has education changed today, other than what I call those mandatory compliant courses. I have a list of stuff I want us to talk about, but I want you to help me understand, from your point of view, why it has to change, and how do we stay on top of keeping education alive for these newer generations. One thing that I know I personally have learned and taught myself, or maybe other people taught me this by trying to educate them, is that everybody learns differently, right?
Yep.
So I had to get that out of my head that I can't just offer one way of training. And there's so many different groups that we have that work in our network that need training, and so many people learn differently, that you have to sort of evolve and find new ways to offer training. So tell me, from your opinion, like, how has training evolved from your very first days that you can remember and that you can see?
I mean, some of the fundamentals are still in place. To your point, Mark, you've got to make sure that you're appealing to that wide audience of learning methodologies, whether they read or hear or see or have to touch and feel to learn. And COVID's really put us in a place where we had to change our perspective on, how people learn. And, it's so important that you be agile and nimble in your approach to learning, that you take into account, the different learning styles, and whether it's virtual, face-to-face, or hybrid, that you plug elements in that are going to appeal to all those different learning styles. I partner a lot with the AAMD, the Apartment Association of Metro Denver here. And, just before COVID, they had opened up their homeroom, which is a hands-on maintenance training facility. And unfortunately, COVID sort of removed that hands-on opportunity. And yet they were agile and nimble enough to say, we can lead people through, the basics of plumbing, electricity, some of those things that are, kind of basic skill sets that a service team member needs to understand, and leading them through, through a virtual option. And, you mentioned, how have things changed? I think our attention span has changed. I remember Tony Blake saying something like, we're now at I think a goldfish has a longer attention span than we do. And a goldfish's attention span is about 8 seconds. And I don't know about you, but through this whole time, I've suffered from Zoom fatigue. And, I've always been a big proponent of the mind can only absorb what the butt can endure. Yep. And, so, even building in a stretch break or a yoga, quick yoga pose or something into your learning to keep the body moving as well as the mind. And I've lost track of what our original question was, because I tend to ramble when we get on these sessions.
No, you're doing great. What's interesting, you say, as you talk, my mind wanders too about all the things that you're talking about, and I can remember how things have evolved. But maintenance, for one, that was one of my questions. I love that you brought up service training. The Atlanta Apartment Association does the same thing. We take people that are looking to get into the industry and we hands-on train them right in the association classroom. And I love this because service training has always been one of those things that was, what, in my opinion, kind of neglected, and in my role as a training director, I noticed that we put all these platforms together to make sure that we had the sales cycle and some leadership. A lot of our leaders in our industry don't think they need extra training. So even that was difficult, right? But it was really
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's a more private conversation. No, but I always used to say, I feel badly because these service team members, they didn't get what I would call even the fundamentals for them. And now what I love is that I partner with the Atlanta Apartment Association to try to engage more in the customer service side of training service team members. In fact, several of my clients have been recruiting me lately to engage in that sort of group that they have. And it's kind of shocking, it's 2021 and the things that they're just being taught about how important they are to the whole sales cycle or life cycle of a resident. This whole experience it's shocking to me. But these are two totally different subjects, like the technical side of what they need to learn. And then once they get in, the service, meaning servicing the resident,
the soft skills. Yeah.
Yes. The soft skills. Yeah.
There are a couple of companies that I've been lucky enough to be associated with, Equity Residential being one of those. And a few years ago, they rolled out a sales curriculum that was relationship-based selling. It was called Click, and it was about that moment when you just kind of click with somebody and you make that connection happen. They actually then, the next step was to roll that out to the service team. So they had Click for service and really demonstrating to the service team how valuable they were to the sale, first of all, giving them an understanding of how much of an impact they play on impacting the bottom line, helping, if they don't turn a unit to a certain standard, it's going to be really difficult for the leasing team to sell that unit. So I've got to applaud them and a couple of other organizations that I've worked with because they recognize the importance of teaching that service team member how important it is to be cordial and to clean up before you leave, and to, leave it cleaner than you found it, and do the 180 before you leave. Is there anything else I can do while I'm here? And then take and having conversations with customers that are, professional and cordial and help to impact your resident loyalty scores. And then whatever intel they learn, they can come back and share that with the office so that they have a strategy to work on the relationship with that particular customer. So I think it's urgently important, especially now, because, we are just about ready to lift our lockdown restrictions, and a lot of parts of the country are getting back to some form of normal, and people are itching to get out of this space they've been in for the last year. And I think anything that a company can do to bolster the service level, the customer experience, giving some of those service team members the opportunity to sit in on a customer service workshop and learn how to diffuse an irate customer situation. It doesn't take rocket science. It just takes listening, responding with empathy, and being able to demonstrate those two things to a customer. Those are easy skills, but they have such a huge impact on the bottom line and keeping the back door closed.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. You used a couple of like real emotional words there too, Steve. So in what you've seen over the past year or so, and even prior to that, do you feel like that there's another level of education that is coming that is much more sensitive, like in improving our overall ability to be sensitive to all of the different issues, not just COVID related, health related, but we have so many other issues that are going on. Do you see that? Do you feel like that is just as important to make sure that that's part of the education that we're giving our team members?
That's a great question. I'd probably have to say, like, the term emotional intelligence, I think, has been a bit overused, and maybe misused, because I think, there are some great folks out in the marketplace. Valerie Sargent, for one. I mean, she's an amazing facilitator. She's certified in emotional intelligence, and what she shares and how it impacts everything that we do as people is amazing. I think we have to be careful in terms of conversations around some topics that might be a little bit too touchy when it comes to race relations or equal pay for women and men. They're important issues to address, but sometimes I think, less is more. My mom, she's, in the living room here watching The Price is Right now, but she's told me for years, God gave you two of these and one of these for a reason.
Very smart lady.
Very wise. Yeah, very wise.
She had me as a son, so there was a reason she was saying that. In the third grade, my third grade teacher, Mrs. Brown, put a screen around my desk. I couldn't see the board. It circled my entire desk because I was too much of a distraction for my other classmates.
Steve, you know what? I can totally see that. I see you being the problem kid in the classroom, the class clown. I mean, that cracks me up.
But,
Jonathan, I wanted to say, Steve is right. And it's a great question that you ask. I have talked to a lot of people about just how our world has evolved and changed with everything that we're struggling with just as a, human
race.
Human race, right?
Race.
It has to. Training will have to evolve into something much, much different. It won't just be about the fundamentals anymore. And it really hasn't even been that for a while. We've evolved our training styles and how what we want to train on for these little micro sessions. But generationally speaking, the generations, they're learning differently. our generation might have learned a little differently. We didn't mind maybe sitting and watching long PowerPoint presentations, but what I call these younger kids today, they're not having it, like they want a 20-minute, let me watch a video, put it on TikTok and I got it, if I see it, I got it and they're good to go. But I've had some really fascinating conversations with some leaders in our industry about what you will be looking for in the future as far as hiring even. So when you think about training, when you think about the individual that you're hiring and training, it is going to be about that emotional intelligence. You should be hiring more for people that are more emotional intelligent. So you might come to the table with a lot of great skill sets, but if you're not emotionally intelligent to run a team of people or to, think quickly and be nimble and be able to recognize when something's going in the wrong direction, that can be a problem. And so we've been talking about that, like, how do you really gauge if someone that you're interviewing has the emotional intelligence to lead your teams? But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that coming in the future, that our eyes are open right now. We can't shut them. So,
right. And I mean, it's not that hard. It's, emotional intelligence really comes down to two things. The first is self-awareness and self-management. Like, I understand how I'm feeling in this moment, and I'm going to keep that under wraps, or I'm going to let it out depending on the situation. And then the second piece is social awareness and relationship management. So you're able to recognize what's in the atmosphere, and you either are going to talk about it, acknowledge it, call it for what it is, or you're going to just keep it to yourself and move on. But those are two things it would be easy to assess through a quick, scenario, or, an irate customer comes in and starts yelling at you. How are you feeling? And the way they describe how they're feeling tells you whether or not they're self-aware enough to manage themselves. And then what are you going to do in the terms of the relationship? I tell a story I think I even might have told this story on our first conversation, Jonathan, around, I had a leasing consultant in South Florida. Her name is Gina. And if she's listening, this is for you, girl. She had a guy come in the office and he was just being a jerk, like to the 12th power, and all this negative energy. And she sat back and she said, "Are you all right?" And he said, "Well, what do you mean? Am I all right?" And she said, "Well, I just met you like 2 seconds ago, and you're sending all this anger and meanness to me, and I don't know what I've done to deserve it." And he was like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. I was on the phone with my ex-wife in the parking lot, and she gets me all twisted, and I brought that right in with me." Yeah. Well, she was emotionally intelligent enough to understand, I'm feeling this isn't fair. And if I'm going to be treated this way, I either have to say something to turn it around, or I just have to put up with it. And she chose to say something, and it completely changed the dynamic of that interaction with the customer. And so I think building some skills around those types of situations is going to be crucial for future. And to your point, for years we've been like, oh, people can't log on to their learning management system at home because all that learning needs to be done on the clock. Yeah. Well, we've learned that we can trust our people now, because most of them have had to work remotely for the last year. And in doing so, now I can learn when it's convenient for me to learn. The middle of my day, when I've got, 6 move outs, I've got a renovation project going on, my property owner is coming for a visit tomorrow, I don't have time right now to sit and watch this webinar. But man, tonight at home, when I'm in my pajamas, comfy slippers, and have a glass of wine, I can watch this learning thing and probably take away from it more than I would if I had to attend to that during the day. So I think, as leaders and directors of organizations, let's be a little bit more open to when we're allowing folks to learn, how we're allowing them to learn, and let's let them maybe sometimes do that on their own terms. And I think at the end of the day, you'll find that you're going to have a team that's better equipped to deal with the circumstances that are coming their way. And you'll have a lot more loyalty because you've given them the opportunity to do things when it's good for them.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Just an idea.
Actually,
I don't run a company, so welcome to Fantasy Island. But
one of my questions for you was, what kind of advice would you give? And you just gave it. I mean, and it's very true. I'll tell you, it's something that we still struggle with. You said a couple things that I wanted to bring up about our struggles. Is that some companies, don't even offer a training program. There is no training program. And my question to you would be, let's talk a little bit about why is it so important that you come up with something? Why is training so important? But then talk to me a little bit about the difference between a systems training piece and then the soft skills training piece, because here's something that I know systems trainers don't always make the best soft skill trainers. I know I've had that conversation with a lot of people, and very technical minded, just it's very simple. It's A plus B equals C, but not every brain works that way, right? So I find it fascinating that where should we spend more of our time? Because I feel like what I'm being told is that teams are so overwhelmed with all the systems that they use that you're right. They don't have time for the soft skills training anymore, but then you can't get people to pass a shopping score, So it's like, oh my gosh, what do we do? What's your advice? Like, how do we fix it, Steve?
Well, and there's lots of layers there that could take us weeks to talk through. I just think you have to, like a shop is one snapshot of one moment in a person's career. And a lot of companies use that as a termination tool versus a learning tool. Repeat that question one more time to me, Mark.
Sorry, it was a deep one. Yeah, it was, what would be your advice to companies that don't have a great training program, any trainer at all? Because we know that they exist, but I guess where I'm trying to take this conversation is the importance of, if you're not going to embrace a training program, then come up with something, understand the differences of your generations, how you're teaching your people. But I feel like the importance of training means that you're willing to invest in your employees to hopefully make them great. These are the people that will be leading this industry when we're all gone, but a lot of organizations are not putting time and money into giving them the adequate training that they need.
To your question, Mark, first of all, if you're a company that doesn't have a learning strategy in place, understand why. If it's from a financial perspective, think about all the time and resources and money that go into hiring and finding the right people for those roles, and then to not equip them with the skills and resources that they need to do their job, get them frustrated, have them leave out, and then spend again that amount of money on recruiting and interviewing and training and hiring a new person. There's a win there if you do train people. I think Richard Branson had a cartoon that he put on that said, what if we hire our people and train them so well they go somewhere else? And his response was, well, what if we hire them and don't train them and they stay?
Right.
So you're shooting I'm paraphrasing it at the worst possible way, but, look at your reason why you're not helping people learn and understand where that comes from. Sometimes it comes from just, it's not been a priority for years and we get in those ruts. And like my mom says, a rut is a grave with the ends kicked out, and nobody wants to be in that position. Right. So, another thing to think about is if you don't have the budget for a training person, there's lots of resources out there. Reach out to your supplier partners, your software company. They've probably got some kind of a resource that can help you teach people how to use the platform effectively. Partner with your local apartment association. And, maybe you can't spend, a salary on a training professional on your team, but you could send somebody to a $49 workshop at the apartment association in your area, where they'll learn some great skills around leasing or customer service or maintenance. If you don't have a maintenance trainer, partner with your local apartment association, because they've got all kinds of resources and classes that are planned, but you do have to spend money to make money. Let me hear you say, how you doing?
Yeah, how you doing?
And if you don't spend money in the right places, you're going to reap results that won't be the best results that you could possibly get. If you invest in your people, that builds loyalty, that builds confidence, that impacts sales, that impacts customer service and customer experience. So you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot if you don't make learning part of your organizational strategy, in my opinion. And of course, I'd say that because I've been a training professional for a lot of years, but even in some of the sales organizations that I've been able to be a part of on the supplier side, there's not an emphasis on onboarding effectively and teaching people how to do their job and use the systems that are in place. And it frustrates and we lose folks. So, all those dollars spent hiring, recruiting, advertising for jobs, people taking time out of their day to interview candidates. All of that's money down the drain if they don't stay part of the organization. So whatever you can do on the front end to equip them with the skills they need to use their software programs, how to do their job effectively, and then building those skills over time in terms of leadership development and giving them the opportunity to experience what it's like to, lead a team or lead a single person. I think leadership was one of the things that we wanted to talk about on this episode as well. And again, if you don't have the resource on your team, there's a ton of resources. I mean, there's consultants like me and you, Mark, in the field who are able to offer these workshops. We'll work with you on pricing because we want to help your company be successful and we want to build a relationship with you that could potentially become a long-term relationship where we're able to meet multiple needs at your organization. And you mentioned earlier the concept of software trainers maybe not being the best suited to teach soft skills. And I'd kind of challenge that with the folks who are listening. I was a software training manager. That's how I got my start in this business for Archstone. And I taught AMSI when it was DOS based.
Wow.
And BCL Ledger.
Dated yourself again, dude.
Oh, welcome to 1990, blah, blah, blah. And, I wasn't real busy. So I asked if I could start doing some additional training in customer service and sales. And then that became my heartbeat. But looking for opportunities to marry the two together where systems and soft skills are partnered on a training opportunity. Here's how you use the system to put a lead and nurture it through the sales funnel. Now let's talk about what it's like to deal with that person when they come through the office and how to build a relationship and how to effectively close the sale. I've done that a number of times where I've partnered with my software training managers or systems folks. And it's important to marry the two because the better you do that, people will be doing what they're supposed to be doing, where they're supposed to be doing it in the right system. And B, you'll have a great ability to capture metrics that you otherwise wouldn't to take a look at your sales performance and your customer satisfaction metrics. And people will feel more confident about their work and they'll do their jobs better.
I love it. I think, look, that's a great way to end. You wrapped it all up in a beautiful package that we can put under beside any birthday cake or whatever we're going to celebrate.
Either that or you just got a chat from Jonathan that said, how are we going to get him to shut up?
Never. You know what?
Remember the screen.
You quoted your mom 3 times. So I think next time we need to bring your mom on the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need her as a guest.
She's pretty wise.
She usually makes a cameo, but I told her she had to stay put today.
I love it. Well, Steve, look, I have to tell you, I love our conversations and I'm so fascinated by them and really fascinated to see what will change in our industry in the coming years. So you might be a guest another time again. So any Jonathan, any last words, anything you want to drive it home, buddy?
Yeah, no, this has been amazing. Just as episode 10 and here we are, episode 22. Great to have you. We will be having you back again. Again, we don't like talking about how old we are, but it's all those years of experience that brings it to the table for all of our listeners and for those watching this on YouTube. So thank you so much, Steve, for being here. And how can people connect?
Pleasure. Thanks for asking. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can email me at stevewunch@outlook.com. That's Wunch like lunch with a W, stevewunch@outlook.com. And I'll just say one last thing too is to those folks listening that are leading organizations, be flexible, be nimble, listen to what your folks are telling you, and be open to change.
That's great. Great advice. I love it.
There's our quote. That's awesome.
That's right.
Thank you, Steve. And Mark.
Thanks, you guys. It's been fun.
How can people connect with you, man? Let's
Yeah, sure. So Mark Howell, I am at Mark at Howell, which is HOWL creativeconcepts.com. If you want to reach out to me, we can certainly talk more about this topic or others. And if you want to be a part of the show, please email Jonathan or I and let us know. And let us know if you have a really great, interesting topic that we can bring to light. But yeah, I've had a blast. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great insights. This show continues to pick up steam, and it's because of guests like you, Steve. Man, just passion. Love it. Education. This is what this program is all about. So thank you for bringing, this to the table today. And it just went off in so many different directions. And it was great. It was really, really good. Well, I mean,
it's what happens when you don't have an agenda.
Yeah. Well, and that's fine. You guys know me well enough. I hate scripted things. And especially for something like this is such an important topic. We're trying to tell people in training and education not to be so scripted and policy driven. So I think we kind of set the bar for, hey, let's just talk about it. What do we need to do? And how are we going to accomplish it? And every leader has to be able to just sit down and have that aha moment and do that with their team. So, man, you set the bar for us today, my friend. Thank you, everyone. We'll look forward.
Guys.
Yeah, we'll see you guys on our next episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.